Aloha everybody, this is Sean with Homestead in Hawaii. Today I am sitting at a project of mine. I take care of a landscape, beautiful landscape here in Hawaii, actually in Leilani, where there was a volcano that erupted just 2 years ago. Right here in the middle of the subdivision, this home was like less than a mile away from this eruption that destroyed over 700 homes. So it's pretty crazy being so close to that, but yet this home here is still a Shangri-La, even though we're so close to the eruption. So it's pretty crazy, but because it's so rich and dense, I have to cut down so many trees on a regular basis here that one of my favorite tools is the chainsaw. It's one of the #1 tools on the homestead, and it's time to give this guy a little bit of maintenance. So I thought today I'd bring you guys along on maintaining a chainsaw. It's pretty basic and simple. It's a scary tool, but the more you learn about it, the better off you're going to be. So let's dive into what it's like to maintain a chainsaw. So I'm kind of old school when it comes to maintaining my chainsaw. Here's my chainsaw. It's an Echo brand chainsaw. It is I think a 16-inch bar, and the chain came off last time I was using it. Anyways, it needs a little bit of a cleaning and a maintenance, and to do that I'm just going to use, I got a sharpener, old school sharpener for sharpening up the blade, and I have just this chainsaw tool which gets off the nuts and bolts and any gas caps and oil caps that might be on there, and I kind of just use the screwdriver end to pry off some gunk and whatnot, and just do a basic maintenance of my chainsaw. I try and do this every other time that I put gas into the chainsaw, is a good rule of thumb. So I'll show you my procedure and how I do it right now. I'm going to start by taking apart the chainsaw a little bit, removing these 2 bolts here. Just loosen both of them and then go ahead and proceed to get them off completely. Before you take your blade off, it's always good to take note of the direction the blade's going to go. So here I have the slope of this part of it. The actual cutting tooth right here is going to be in front when we're on the top, as opposed to this part being reversed and being on this side. So just take note that this is the direction your blade is going to go when it's on top. You could always place it down on the ground, similar to how you would place it back onto the chainsaw. Alright, so go ahead and you can remove the bar, and we're going to take our screwdriver end and just start cleaning it up. Get all the gunk out of there. This is sort of the in the field cleaning that you might have to do if you're out on a project or you just have a lot of trees to cut. I tend to want to batch all my chainsaw work at the same time, so I will be out for a while using a chainsaw, so it's always good practice to clean it more than once if you're out on a long day. You want to make sure your chainsaw is in good working operation. You don't want any chance of anything bad to happen that might cause you injury. So I like to get in there, just clean up, just a light cleaning. If you're at home and you have more time, you can really get in there with a rag, clean everything up. But if you're out in the field, this is kind of what you're gonna do, just kind of a rough little cleanup. I've had this chainsaw now for 15 years. I use it fairly regularly. I've cut down a lot of trees in my day, and it's still working great, starts great, no problem. I'm sure to take care of it at every other fill up for my gas, and if you do that, you're going to also have a pretty well maintained and cared for chainsaw that'll last you a long time. Okay, don't forget to do the faceplate here. This tends to really get gunked up sometimes, especially around this little mechanism. You want to make sure that it's able to move freely. This is what adjusts the tension on your chain. And just all this gunk, you know, the more you clear it off, the less it interferes with your chain as it runs through your chainsaw. The cleaner the chain, the better it's going to cut for you. There you go. All right, you can take your chainsaw bar here and just, you know, give it a clean, give it a wipe down. Inspect the guide down here in between and make sure there's just not any rocks or debris that might cause any trouble. If you have a wire brush, that's good. If you don't, a screwdriver can also just work its way through and get any debris out. Always make sure that the track is clear and there's no like weird directional changes or bends to it that may occur from any trauma that may have happened during the life of the chainsaw. But yeah, so this bar is looking pretty good, ready to be put into use. So I'm going to attach it back onto the chainsaw and then we're going to put the blade on. I'm going to start by getting the chain around my bar, making sure to orient the chain in the proper direction where the top of your bar, you know, you could have your bar go in either direction, so why not just have it the right way and have the top of the bar showing the chains off, where the front of the cutting tooth that's got a curve to it, that's going to be the front, and here the actual cutting tooth, that's going to be right here, the shiny one, that's going to be on the back side. So the blade moves forward like this and cuts the tree or whatever you're cutting that way. I'm going to get it onto my bar here a little ahead of time, and then we're going to place it onto the chainsaw body. Here we go. It's ready to go. I'm going to take my chain that's ready to go, my bar and chain, slip the chain over this pulley here, and then the bar over the two bolts, getting it situated so that the chain is fitting nice and tight over the pulley and over the bar. So now you can see here that the chain is over the pulley and it's over the bar nice and tight. I am holding it with my right hand tight. If I let go, it gives a little. Make sure that you hold it tight and you keep the chain engaged where it needs to be. And then I'm going to bring over the housing, still holding the bar. This screw here in the housing, this screw in the housing fits in these two holes in the bar. So you want to line up this screw in the housing with those two holes. That's how you're going to be able to tighten your bar. Alright, get your nuts onto those two bolts. Just hand tighten for now. Check the looseness of your chain. This is pretty good, but I know that a chain loosens up pretty quickly, so I'm going to just make it a little tighter just to start with, giving it a clockwise turn, just bringing it in just a little bit. You can see it kind of pulled in, and now I have the chain where I like to start off, maybe just a little quarter more of a turn. Okay, there you go. It's a little bit on the tight side, but it's pretty good. And then go ahead and tighten your bolts down one at a time, nice and evenly. You don't want to do one bolt real tight and then do the other bolt. You want to go a little bit at a time with each one. That way the tightness of your chain kind of stays in place. Sometimes you could lose it as you tighten these bolts. Okay, so your chainsaw is almost ready to go. Before we get started, we are going to sharpen our blade, which is the fun part for the old school guys. This should be done after every other gas change at the most. Otherwise, you're going to be working with a dull blade. I used to do it every gas change, but I've been getting a little lazy. They got these cool tools that fit over the end and sharpen a chainsaw blade pretty quick. I've only seen those and heard about those, and my friend has one and he swears by it. I still do it this old-fashioned way. So let me show you here on this tool. There's some lines. Hopefully you can see them. These are the angles of the blade on your chainsaw. So I try and match up where the blade is currently. I think it's going to be at this angle, and I line this this angle perfectly parallel to my blade. So let me show you. Okay, so hopefully you can see it here. What I'm talking about, these lines right here, that's where we're gonna match up parallel to the blade. So right there you can see the line parallel to the chain right here, and underneath that looks like the same matchup. It could be sometimes that you're working with this line, but I know that based on the angle of my blade, I am working on this more extreme angle here. So I'm going to go ahead and just give it a couple times back and forth on each one. I release the blade release here so that I can move the blade along, and I'm just going to go along and tighten each blade, or sharpen each blade. I just do it like 5 or 6 times. See a little shine inside the little groove. Make sure that you keep this tool parallel with the top of your saw and the line at the same angle as we originally lined it up with, okay? So for me, I first used a chainsaw when I moved to Vermont when I was about 25 years old. I'm from the city of Los Angeles, and I knew nothing about living in the country at that time. And I lived in Hawaii for a couple years before that. I met a girl, and then I moved back with her and her family for a year and couldn't stand the cold really. So I eventually made my way back here to Hawaii. But when I was there, remember, there are so many trees there, so many trees to cut. I wanted to get into doing a maple orchard, so I had to do a lot of work to get that ready, and that required a lot of tree cutting. And when I got there, I never used a chainsaw before. I went out to try and cut a tree, and this blade wouldn't work. It wouldn't spin at all. I thought for sure the chainsaw was broken, so I took it down to the local repair shop and told them, hey man, my chainsaw is broken. We're going to turn it around and work on the other side of the blades. As you can see, I was doing every other blade. You could only hit the blades on the same direction at a time. So before I hit up these blades here, you can see they're shiny. Now I'm going to hit up these blades here, and once again line up the angle and do the same thing. Oops, you're lining up a different angle this time. Right here, this angle. The first time we're up here, now we're back down here because we changed sides, and just do the same thing. But yeah, so I took my chainsaw into the repair shop. I was like, hey guys, this chainsaw's broke. You know, can you fix it for me? And they picked it up, they started it, the blade didn't move, and then they moved this little chain guard right here, and boom, what do you know, chainsaw started right up. All the old timers in the shop just laughed at me. I felt like the total city slicker at that moment, and I definitely got a lesson that day on how to take care of a chainsaw and how to actually use one. Lucky for me, they were friendly enough to give me the lowdown before I killed myself. And a chainsaw is definitely a tool to be respected, even for people who have been using chainsaws their whole lives. They have to continually respect the chainsaw. And I learned techniques to cut trees that are totally like you wouldn't even think of doing, and they are like the safest thing you could possibly do when it comes to cutting a tree. I'll show you a method I learned one time during a workshop I took out there in Vermont on how to cut a tree, utilizing this really weird way of cutting a tree, but I like it. It's something I use from time to time on larger trees. But for the most part, I do a typical, cut. But yeah, that was a memory I always will remember when going into that chainsaw shop and knowing nothing. And since that day, I really wanted to do my best to learn all about how to live off-grid, the tools that I was going to need and how to take care of them, and just overall, what it took to learn the skills of off-grid living, or just living the way people used to live. I didn't want to be a city boy anymore. I want to know how to do things. So the chainsaw was one of the first things I mastered. Okay, some of you may be wondering what the flathead screwdriver side of this tool is all about. Well, it is for changing your gas. So once your gas is empty, you want to be sure you fill it back in with a mix of 40-to-1, where you put the little gas can, you have gas mixed with a little bit of an oil, something you typically put into a weed whacker or other tools. You can see the image has a gas plus oil. Make sure you don't just put gas in there. So that's on this side, and with every gas change you should check this side, which is the bar and chain oil. Now what's cool, some people out there have come up with a bar and chain oil that is biodegradable, good for the environment, and even plants mushrooms. It helps break down the trees that you're cutting, and sometimes even provides you with edible resources in the form of edible mushrooms. So that is pretty cool. I am using a bar and chain oil that I just picked up from Home Depot. Unfortunately, I don't have that cool eco-friendly product out here, but it would be something interesting to try and formulate on my own. But yeah, check the bar and chain oil every time you change the gas. It tends to go out at the same time the gas goes out. And then you're ready to go. When I get to break out the chainsaw, it's a lot of hard work. It gives me a good workout. By the time I'm done, I am sweaty and tired and exhausted, but it feels good. And I think of cutting down trees not necessarily something that's bad for the environment. Sometimes it's good. There's too many trees that start to clog up a system, and you need to thin them out sometimes. It's kind of like out here in the tropics, I see trees as sort of the weeds in a vegetable garden. Some trees are weeds in the tree system, and it's up to us as the gardener here in the tropics, where we're working with more woody mass sometimes, that we got to cut the weeds out of the garden. And a lot of that in food forestry, forest gardening, we are cutting out weeds that just so happen to be trees. And a chainsaw is a tool that you're going to need to know how to use. I've been using a chainsaw for over 15 years now, and I never had any major issues or problems with using it. I've always been safe. But this is how I take care of my chainsaw in the field, using simple tools. It's something that I could have just in my pocket, ready to go. Something I do after every fuel change, and something that you should think about doing too. This process only took me about 20 minutes. I can use a whole fuel tank probably if I do it every other fuel tank, It's like, you know, every 2 hours. And think of it as a break. Cutting trees is a lot of hard work. Taking the time in the shade, maintaining your tool, making sure it's sharp and ready to go is not only a welcome break, but a smart move. So I hope you learned something about taking care of a chainsaw, learned a little bit about the importance of a chainsaw on a homestead, especially here in the tropical climate where we are utilizing, we're working with a different kind of weed sometimes. A tree just happens to be our weed. So yeah, stay tuned. We'll show you more videos. Next time we're gonna break open the chainsaw and learn how to maintain the inside, change the fuel filter, the air filter, the spark plug, and then we'll cut some trees. And we'll show you all about the method that I was telling you about. Please hit like, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and please leave a comment. Every comment that you leave helps grow this channel. I am trying to give everyone the tools and resources they need to be able to go off-grid wherever they may be. I just happen to be in Hawaii. You might be somewhere else, but wherever you are, let's do it. Let's go off-grid. Let's start a new paradigm, a new future beyond the pandemic, and create a world where we are less reliant on the centralized system and we're more reliant on ourselves and on our community. Aloha everybody. Till next time, take care.